gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors episode 418. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by viable human Chris Saturn.
Woo! I'm a little late. You got a great start this time.
Yeah, it's
the uncut people understand. The people who don't get the uncut, they don't understand why we're already losing it.
it's because this is the second show of the night. It's 11 o'clock.
Well, that's part of it.
It's my week. I had a week.
Did you?
I feel like last time we talked on the show, I was talking about MechWarrior 5 and how I was playing like third person, FPS controls. And then I was like, I kind of switched back to regular controls.
Right.
And now I've gone full insane person and I purchased a HOTAS,
Right.
the stick and throttle flight thing.
Yeah.
And now I'm running it traditional mode with that in the first person in cockpit view.
Okay.
This
You're
is
steel battalioning it.
I've gone completely full circle from like, hey, look, it's just a regular action game to I am an insane person with a specialty MechWarrior controller that I already have like weird things with that I have to be like, oh, well, that trigger sticks sometimes and you got to push the throttle this way so that it goes right. And it's so good, Saturn.
So let me ask you this. Have you found even one additional game that controller works on yet?
Does that matter? It works on MechWarrior.
No, it doesn't matter at all. I was just curious.
Well, I went to play MechWarrior Online because everyone's like, online is like timeline-wise way ahead of the MechWarrior 5 game. And I was like, that'll be good because I want to play some of the later mechs.
Yeah.
And I get in there and my flight stick is not immediately recognized. And I go online and I'm like, hey, what's up? How do I use a flight stick? And people are like, never do that. Don't use the flight stick. You'll get annihilated. And so I couldn't use it there, and I didn't want to install Elite Dangerous, so it's just kind of my my MechWarrior 5 controller now. Now, to be in my defense, I got it for $30.
That's something.
I got it used on eBay, and it was only slightly smelly. So it's been good.
What did it smell like?
Kind of like cigarettes and butt.
Oh, okay, that's
a little
fine.
bit.
That's better than like turds and cockroaches.
But I'm enjoying it so much that I'm struggling to go back to MechWarrior not on my flight stick. It's so because I switched back to the regular controls because many times I want to independently be walking one way and controlling my legs and my torso twisted around another direction. And now I'm able to even more easily do that with the flight stick. And it has just made all the difference. It's so much fun and it's very immersive. I tried to set up the VR thing so I could do VR and the flight stick and just be like fully immersed in my own MechWarrior pod at home. But I cannot get the VR thing to work on my headset, so that's just not going to be a thing, I don't think, which made me very sad.
Yeah, I was waiting to see what you said it was going to have cost. $30 isn't that bad.
No, I think with shipping it was like $40 maybe.
What's the retail on that stick?
Like retail is like $100, but it sells for like $60-$70 new pretty regularly. It's not one of the big fancy ones. It's just a little thing that sits on my desk.
I was because like part of me was bracing that if it was going to be like a retail $200 stick, I was like, it is like Steel Battalion.
Now I would love to like do the whole like construct my own MechWarrior cockpit and like get the full fucking thing. Like that would be incredible. But I don't have that's money,
Yeah, I understand.
And I don't have that money. And I'm having a good time. It's really fun. I used to play MechWarrior with just a joystick and it had the little tiny piddly throttle like on the base.
Mm-hmm.
This throttle, it's got a bump in the middle, which is nice because forward is forward and backward is backward. But so I know when I'm at 0.
Yeah.
But it's got these like paddles on the front of the throttle that kind of wiggle left and right. And I use those to rotate my legs. And so it's just really nice. Like for anyone that's like, you like MechWarrior and you're like, I thought about the flight stick thing, but I don't know. It's really fun. It's super duper fun. I'm having so much fun with it. And my kid comes up here and she plays and she makes me control the legs and then she just misses everything. And she loves it too. It's just been So much fun.
Nice.
I also got I got in a mood for a first person shooter, and I couldn't play one of the hundreds I already own. I had to buy another one.
Right, yeah, that's how it works.
So I picked up Bolt Gun, which is the Warhammer 40K Bolt Gun.
I've been hearing good things about that.
It's bad.
Oh.
It's a bad game. I don't understand. So, okay, here's the thing. First of all, aesthetically, they do the kind of pixely looking art. But you have a servitor skull that like gives you tips and talks to you during the game, and the graphic for that takes up a good chunk of the top left corner of the screen, and it's in regular high resolution graphics. So it looks kind of
Out of
weird.
place.
It looks out of place, and you're like, all right, that's kind of weird. Turning the horizontal axis is tremendously slow in the game, such that I'll get killed before I can even physically turn. And I've played with the settings to try to fix it. I can't fix it. I don't know what's up. But then my real issue is, at first, you're like, this is great. First level, you play it, pretty simple. The shooting is pretty fun. You've got a big chainsword. That's pretty cool. There's like gore everywhere. It's like full-on fountains of blood and gore, and that's cool. Yeah. But then you play the first level, and it's really simple, and you're like, okay. And then the levels start to get more complicated. And they're bad. They're badly designed levels. Like they'll have keys literally right next to the door that they're like, it'll be like, oh, here's a nook, and then there's the door it goes to, and you're like, why did you put it? Why did I need a key for that? The levels are not intuitive. They loop around in weird ways. Enemy placement is, and I didn't even notice this, but I was trying to figure out why I was having a bad time.
Yeah.
And so I go to read Steam reviews, and I'm like, because, you know, sometimes you play a game and you're like, I don't like this, and I don't really know why. And I kept dying over and over and over. And thankfully, there's accessibility options that include invulnerability.
That's good.
And so I go and I'm reading Steam reviews, and one guy goes, the enemy placement is horrible and nonsensical, and it's weird, and it makes the game play bad. And I realized that's what it is. Like, you'll walk into enemies, you'll have like 12 enemies literally on top of each other in the left half of a room, and then nothing next to them. They're just spaced weird and clumped up, and the levels are also kind of spaced weird and clumped weird, and it's like the person that made it didn't understand Doom level design.
That's unfortunate.
Which, on the one hand, is nice because Doom gets pretty labyrinthian pretty fast. Probably 40% of my time playing Doom is walking through empty corridors going, where the fuck do I go?
Yeah. I understand that.
So it's definitely more direct, but not in a better way, just in a bad and a different kind of way. And there is, that I can find, no map. And you cannot, I'm sorry, you cannot make a boomer shooter with no map. You can't do that. I gotta have a fucking map. That's why I like these games.
It's weird. I keep hearing people praising this game. This is one of the first times I've heard a negative review of it.
Like the moment to moment, like the shooting is really good. It also does that kind of like Doom Eternal and Doom 2016 thing where you'll enter into like a big kill arena where the screen will turn red, and it's like, hey, basically you're fighting waves of enemies until you've completed this area, and then you can move on. Like it locks you in them. Those are really fun. They're really cool. But then you got to play the rest of the level, and you're like, oh, the rest of this level sucks. And so I decided, I was worried because I'd played a good amount of it, and it takes a little bit to dawn on you. Because again, the first level, I was like, this is great. And then the second level, I was like, nah, it wasn't, because the first level, I don't know why that key was literally right by the door. Played the third level, and it was kind of bad. And I was like, well, 2 for 3. And then the fourth level, and then I keep going, and then I go and I read a Steam review, and I'm like, yeah, I think... Because I would have never noticed that it was the enemy placement, but it is. Wow, the enemies are placed just really weirdly.
It's weird, the things like that can make a huge difference that you never even notice.
You never notice. And I was like, what is that? What is, like, I like killing these dudes, but it's like they're just like clumped weird or some shit. And then someone in the Steam review was like, the enemy placement seems to be just random.
It's just like when you have... awkward physics in a platformer, you can play the entire game and not notice it, but something feels wrong.
Yeah. Like, Doom was always real good about, like, they'd be like, all right, here's a couple of these little pistol guys, and then there's an imp kind of up in the corner, and then there's 2 or 3 imps, and then, there's a pinky, it like ramps up
Yeah.
the enemy presentation, or it'll present enemies in interesting ways. Hey, here's a room with 50 pinkies, but over there are some barrels that you can shoot and blow up a lot. It's just thoughtfully placed.
Yeah.
And this game is not thoughtfully placed.
Well, that's
And
a shame.
the power-ups aren't thoughtfully placed. It is a struggle to kill people with exploding barrels in this game because they don't place enemies by them. And I'm like, the whole
That's
point of an
not very
exploding
useful.
barrel in a boomer shooter is to put an enemy by it, and then I can shoot it and then watch them explode.
Yeah.
And so it just the gunplay is really good. I like that. But
Do you think they could patch out some of the problems, or is it just too far gone?
I think the problem, like if they just added a map,
Mhm.
that would fix a lot of it. But then a lot of it is just kind of the level design and enemy placement.
That's a
And that's just design work. So I
Right,
don't see
right.
it happening.
Yeah.
It was just kind of disappointing. I was excited because I went to look and I was like, man, I need to return this. I don't know how much I played. And for people that don't know, Steam, you have to play less than 2 hours of a game.
Right.
And I turned it off, and in my head, I was like, do I want to return it? Do I want to give it another shot? I didn't love that because I'd played it in 3 sessions. First session was fun. Second and third were not fun. And I looked, and I had played 119 minutes. And I was like, well, guess I'm returning it because one more minute is not going to convince me one way or the other.
Right.
And just to make sure I wasn't crazy or being critical, I went and I played Proteus, that boomer shooter from a while back.
Yeah.
That is very thoughtfully designed, and enemies are very thoughtfully laid out, and they seem to have like a level rating system. I think a lot of the levels are community built, and they're given to you based on like community ratings.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's still real good. It's a real fun game. So yeah, that's Bolt Gun. I didn't love it. I've played a decent amount of these boomer shooters, and just last week I picked up the Duke Nukem 3D like World Tour collection because it was like $1 on Steam, and also a game that, while being crass and stupid, is pretty thoughtfully designed. And so it was just kind of sad. Maybe if it had been like years since I had played Doom or something, like in my head, it wouldn't, you know what I mean? I wouldn't have that
Right.
kind of subconscious expectation. But going into it, having played Proteus and Duke Nukem and Doom relatively recently, and what was that one? Warlock. There's one called Warlock that's really good. It just misses. You know, it gets so close to the mark and then just goes a little bit left
That
of it.
sucks.
You know what I mean? But what have you been playing?
So I want to talk some more about Final Fantasy 16,
Yes.
which I talked about last week. But
yes.
so I did want to talk about the other things that I didn't address before. So one, I want to talk about the graphics real quick because it is a PS5 game and it is a PS5 exclusive game. It is one of the first games that I've played that is not also on the older consoles. So I wanted to gauge it on its graphics.
Mm-hmm.
And the cutscenes, the FMVs, are gorgeous. Like, it looks very, very good. There is a bizarre amount of nudity. There are many cutscenes where it is a couple in bed, presumably having just had sex, cuddling, and they are nude, and their nipples and their nether regions are conveniently covered with something at all times.
Okay.
Like there's some hair in the way, or there is an object in the way, or whatever.
I've seen Austin Powers. I know how they do these tricks.
Yeah. However, it is just uncovered enough for you to be able to see that the people in this medieval world are completely hairless from the neck down.
Okay. Like one of those cats.
Yeah, it's really weird. and like armpits hairless, chest hairless, legs hairless, nether region hairless. It's odd and consistent
Strange.
for everyone.
Very strange.
The guys have nipples. You can see their nipples, but their nipples are textures. They are not actually rendered. So it just looks like a pepperoni is stuck there on their pec. Other than that, the graphics are really, really good in any cutscene. Like it is
I just want to reiterate my statement from the last episode is that you keep explaining this game and I keep waiting for you to go, it's stupid and bad, and then you don't. You say it's amazing.
Well, the thing is, I only point out the negatives. And that's how I always do things, unfortunately. And it makes it sound like I don't like things, but I do.
Yeah, it does make it sound that way.
The other foible I have with the cutscenes is there's grades of cutscenes. There's the really, really nice ones that look incredible, and especially the action sequences look absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is the like in-engine cutscenes, and and so like during the like proper cutscenes, like it's perfect lip syncing. You can see like musculature move when people move and everything. And then it gets to the in-engine cutscenes where people are having a conversation and they're standing there like PS3 characters.
Mm.
And like their lips are just like my. And it's such a weird contrast to sometimes what was happening seconds before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I am disappointed by that because Horizon Forbidden West did that so well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a game that is also on PS4. So I know the hardware can handle it.
Yeah.
So that's a little disappointing, but it still looks really, really good. Even in those moments, the animation is just a little off.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I did want to mention is the story, because it is a not at all subtle allegory of race relations.
Oh. Is it handled delicately?
It's
or is it handled the same as that cutscene that called someone a cock?
It's handled more delicately than that.
Okay.
And that cutscene, for the record, is two people who know each other very well. They're they're friendly, kind of playfully insulting one another.
Yeah, I call Saturn a cock all the time.
That's true. That's basically my nickname, Saturn the Cock.
Saturn the cock.
So the giving a brief description of the game's background that it kind of tells you that it like pours at you in the first hour or two, is that there is a dichotomy between people in the world that can use magic and people in the world that cannot use magic.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that can use magic are looked down upon.
Okay.
And in our hero's country, they're subjugated. They're treated
Saturn,
as
this is
lessers.
X-Men.
Mm-hmm. And in all the other countries in the world, they are slaves, and they are treated as slaves, and the people are awful. All the people are awful towards them and just straight up treat them as slaves. And what I don't get is these are people that can use magic. They can start fires with their minds.
Yeah.
And they're enslaved. Why haven't they like risen up?
Uh-huh.
And they never explain that. I keep waiting for it. However, a couple hours in, you meet a guy and he's like, what if we were all equal? And that's the whole premise, is you're like, oh, let's build a world where we can all be equal.
Uh-huh.
And everybody acts like it's a novel idea, like, oh, I've never thought of that before. But then every ally
what if we didn't subjugate everybody?
Right?
Oh.
Yeah.
What if?
But then every time you meet an ally that joins your cause, they're like, oh yeah, we've been treating them like equals for years now. That's just what we do here. So it's not an original idea.
So again, where is the good part of this game that is... What is...
The gameplay. The gameplay is the good part. The gameplay is
cannot be that good.
It's so fun, man. It's really, really
God
fun.
damn it.
Anyway, I did want to briefly mention a side story from the very, very end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
This is not story relevant. Actually, now I'm blanking on what the story was that I wanted to tell about it because it annoyed me so much. But
We'll never know.
I'll come back to it on another episode then. So instead, I had intended finishing Final Fantasy 16 to go into Trails into Reverie because that was supposed to come out today.
Right.
My copy hasn't shipped that I paid $200 for.
Mm.
And I am frustrated by that. I can't play it. But the whole time I was playing Final Fantasy 16, I was like, this game is reminding me of something.
Yeah.
Like it's got a lot of things that remind me of something. And it occurred to me when I was looking at my PlayStation's library and I was seeing all the games that are on my account that I own. And I was looking through all these Final Fantasies that I played. I played the Pixel remasters recently, and I'm looking through and which ones are not on PlayStation, oddly, are 11 and 13.
Very weird.
And then I clicked on it. I was like, oh, it's Final Fantasy 14. That is the game that 16 reminds me of.
Uh-huh.
Well, Reverie hasn't arrived. I'll try that for a minute.
Oh, no, Saturn. No, you said you wouldn't.
I know I said that.
You said you'd never go back.
So I want to explain what it feels like to go back to that.
Yeah, because you were
addicted.
Hardcore into FF14 for a couple years there, it feels like.
Yeah, my account said that I had last logged in August of 2016.
Uh-huh. So you've been clean for this long.
Right? So I figured I'd give it another shot. It's changed a lot.
Uh-huh.
It feels like going to an old neighborhood you used to live in and seeing all the things that are different.
Yeah, the Denny's is gone. There's a new racetrack.
Yeah, that kind of thing. The one thing that they added that I am happy about, actually almost all the changes are good. It's positive quality of life changes.
Yeah.
A lot of simplification. Like most of my abilities that I used to have are no longer in the game. So I have to completely relearn how it is played. I don't think I will get that far because once Reverie comes in,
you're going to do that. Yeah.
Put it down. But one thing I really appreciate is they added in an option to use NPCs for all the instance dungeons.
Oh, well, that's good.
So now you no longer have to wait for a party. You can just immediately start that dungeon as long as it's a story quest.
Yeah. Or deal with fucks, which is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So I noticed immediately that it was NPCs because it's the first time I've ever played that first story dungeon in this game where the tank was actually able to hold aggro. Really impressive. Excellent work for the NPC tank. Best tank I've ever had, including when I was tank. You can't hold aggro in that dungeon. You don't have the tool set for it yet.
Yeah.
But that guy, he's got it. So good on you, NPC tank.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Now I'm worried about you, Saturn. I'm going to check on you in a couple weeks and be still in the 14 because,
man. I will say I'm already at level 20 on 2 classes on this new character I started. That's a problem.
I see, yeah.
I was really thinking Reverie was going to be here and then this wasn't going to be an issue.
You know, last episode when you were asking me if I hate free time?
Yeah.
Let's do the news.
Yeah.
Mojang will no longer support the official Minecraft subreddit in response to the Reddit drama, because really no one should support Reddit anymore. I will say that in the federated space, Lemmy has gotten enough users that it is actually a suitable, I'm bored, let's scroll something alternative now, which has been very nice to see.
One thing I'm worried about is one of the federated Lemmy servers decided to defederate.
Defederate, yes.
And that frustrated me because I had already subscribed to many communities on that server, and suddenly my subscribed community list shrank significantly.
Yeah. I think that's just going to end up being a necessary evil, is the possibility of your preferred server defederating.
Yeah.
I don't know what the fix is for that, but yeah, that did suck.
It is frustrating, though.
Sega announces Lego DLC for Sonic Superstars before the game's even out. Don't you love how they're already selling you more stuff before you've even bought the game? Isn't that great?
I don't even know if it's paid DLC or not. I didn't see that in the trailer. I assume it is.
Saturn, it's Lego. They paid
Lego
for the
company
Lego
wants money.
license. Yes.
But I will say that Lego Sonic murdered the fuck out of Robotnik in that. Or, sorry, Eggman.
Yeah.
He's Eggman now.
I'm so tired and old, and whenever you're like, this game's coming out, I'm like, that looks cool. Anyway, here's the additional stuff you can buy for it. And I'm like, I didn't know I needed to buy accessories for my game. They're like, well, you can buy
the game yet.
If you buy the platinum version with the season pass, and then I'm done. I can't
Yeah,
can't.
I'm still frustrated that the deluxe version of Sonic Origins doesn't come with the new Plus pack.
Unofficial support for Game & Watch and Tiger handhelds added to the Analog Pocket. Yeah, although Saturn wrote the Analog Procket.
So I did.
Is what I will now be calling it. If you have an Analog Procket, then now you can play some Tiger handhelds on it. So I hope you enjoy that.
Keep
On your Procket. Fans remake the first Fire Emblem as a mod for Fire Emblem Fates.
You remember when George Jetson worked for Spacely Prockets?
Was Fates the second 3DS Fire Emblem?
I think so, either the second or the third.
That's the one that came out like Pokemon style. And it was 2 games.
Yes, I believe so. And then there was a third one that was downloadable only.
Yeah,
and it was supposedly an excellent gameplay system, and it was the complaints were mostly around the stories and the odd sexualization.
The story and characters. I'll say this: the first Fire Emblem on 3DS, one of my Awakening, one of my favorite games of all time. Incredible game. I hated Fates with a deep, fiery passion for all of the stupid characters in the absolutely boneheaded story. Could not handle it.
Well, now you can get the gameplay of Fates with the story and characters of the first Fire Emblem.
I like this. I might put this on my 3DS.
There you go.
Sega Retro has posted a 272-page PDF of classified Sega of America documents from 1996. I've not looked at these. I cannot fucking wait.
Yeah, it's a lot of old advertising stuff, a lot of internal memos about how they're going to destroy Sony. Spoiler, they didn't.
They didn't. Man, with Saturn, maybe they're still waiting on their second wind. Dreamcast 2, it could happen.
Any day now.
I mean,
this
if Atari can release...
This is years before Dreamcast.
If Atari can release a fucking VCS in like 2020... then Dreamcast 2 can happen. I'm just saying. It can happen.
Hopefully, it does better than the Atari VCS.
They got to give the Amico room to breathe. They don't want to be competing on the same market. But Dreamcast 2, I think it's gonna happen.
Any day now. With Sonic Spinball 2 as a launch title.
Myst is getting an unofficial port to Atari 2600. So enjoy. The game
I can't stomach Myst as it is.
The game that was sold exclusively for how good it looks and for no other real reason is getting downported to the Atari. Awesome.
You know what? I give huge props to the people who are making this, because this has to be a labor of love.
It can't be a labor of anything else. That's for goddamn sure.
Exactly.
Andrew bought a new in shrink big box copy of Myst at Half Price Books with me yesterday.
Why?
He was like, I gotta buy this. And I was like,
you really don't.
And I was like, you do. You don't see a lot of in shrink new big box copies of Myst. And he bought it.
Ugh.
And so that was fun. NoClip has acquired hundreds of tapes of gaming history and is uploading raw data to archive.org. This is what preservation looks like. For anyone that's wondering, this is it. This right here is what it looks like.
Yeah, they're also uploading most of it to their YouTube channels as well, but they are still making the complete raw data available on archive.org, which is great. I'm happy about that. They even got some like pre-edited data from some broadcast conventions and stuff. Yeah. So they said they want to re-edit it to back to what we actually saw back in the day, but they're still going to upload the pre-edited stuff, which is neat.
I appreciate, and it may just be because we're in the wake of this like Reddit meltdown, and for people that haven't been following it, a lot of subreddits never came back.
Right.
And we are just watching huge swaths of internet resources disappear because of that.
And what's more, even for the subreddits that are coming back, a lot of Reddit users, as part of their protest, went through and deleted their entire comment history.
And so it is very nice to me to see that they're uploading this to archive.org and not just siloing it into YouTube.
Right, exactly.
Which is very nice. Halo Infinite's Steam user count has dropped to 2% of launch numbers. That's what happens when you fuck up a game that bad, you dum-dums.
Right.
God, I'm still mad about Halo Infinite. Still mad about it. Now, the single-player campaign, I had a lot of fun with that. It's pretty fun. They shouldn't have lied about what they were going to make for the game, and they shouldn't have made the multiplayer so financially fucked whenever it first came out. Last season pass I ever buy. Good God. Maybe it was my fault for buying a season pass.
It might have been your fault buying a season pass.
Microsoft finally changed the 1-to-1 conversion from Xbox Live Gold to Game Pass Ultimate.
Yeah, it is now a 4-to-3 conversion.
Oh.
Which is still, okay.
Yeah.
And it's still technically a savings over just buying Game Pass outright.
Right.
But I think they are, in addition to the recent price increase, starting to finally crack down on so many of the people who have been using cheats and tricks to get discounted.
Yeah,
rates.
we've been seeing that coming for a while, though.
I feel that the next one they're going to crack down is got to be on a different region.
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
That feels like an easy win for them.
Yuji Naka sentenced to 2.5 years in prison and fined a total of 173 million Japanese yen. That sucks.
Well,
that sucks, man.
And that's a comparatively light sentence for what he got. So,
True.
That's some good news. But now who will make the sequel to Balan Wonderworld?
Hopefully nobody. Hopefully nobody. Which brings us to our topic at hand, which is not title, which is what's written in the notes.
My bad.
It's Super Nintendo 101.
Yeah.
It's
title.
Which, for people that don't know, is our collector-centric episodes. We realized we have not done a 101 for the Super Nintendo, which feels weird.
All right.
As with other 101 episodes, this is going to be America-centric. This is where we live, so this is what we know. So there you go. Also, prices here. Any prices listed are going to be direct from pricecharting.com. Right. And so this means that these prices are not buy it now on eBay.
Right.
These are the prices that you're going to have to wheel and deal and bargain and fight for. You can get them. I have done it. I promise you can. You got to send offers. You got to send messages. You got to talk to people. You got to be quick. It can happen. You can do it.
It's exhausting.
But if you just want to go buy it now on eBay and not have to fuss with it, take every price we say and add 30%.
And if you want to buy it now on Amazon, take any prices we say and add 300%.
Yeah. So if you can be patient, if you can be diligent, if this is stuff that you're like, hey, I want to get into Super Nintendo collecting, I'm willing to play the long game, I don't need an overnight collection, then you can get these prices. Otherwise, Good luck. Also, if you're not in America, extra good luck.
I have no idea what your prices are. They might be better. They might be worse.
Yeah. As far as release information, the Super Nintendo came out November 21st, 1990 in Japan as the Super Famicom, North America August 23rd, 1991, and in European territories between April and July 1992, depending on the exact European country. We had a Super Nintendo, but we got it late. It was Christmas 90, I want to say 5, maybe 94. But we got it later. It was not right at launch.
Dang near in PlayStation territory at that point.
And when I was collecting, when I started like actually actively collecting retro games when I turned 15.
Yeah.
Because I realized like a lot of our...
been in like, what, 2012?
No, Saturn. It would have been early 2000s. It would have been like 2003-ish. 4-ish. And so... what I realized was all of our old retro games, the NES and Super Nintendo and stuff, were kind of my brothers.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any, like we still owned them, but they were kind of his.
Right.
And so I went and I bought an NES, and I did not bother to collect anything on Super Nintendo because I preferred the NES, and I did for a long time. And so my experience collecting SNES stuff is very late to the game, and it's a system I've not done much collecting for. I went and picked up some Super Famicom versions of games just to have them, your Final Fantasies and Super Mario RPGs and things.
Yeah.
But they're in Japanese, so they don't do me a lot of good, But yeah, I've not collected a ton of Super Nintendo stuff, mostly because a lot of the really good stuff is kind of available elsewhere. All the Final Fantasies on Super Nintendo are available elsewhere, and arguably in better format, depending on which game it is. Chrono Trigger has been re-released
Yep.
You know, there's a lot of big heavy hitter, especially the more expensive JRPG stuff that is
True.
just kind of available elsewhere. So unless you really want to play
not
it here,
all of it though.
True, this is true, and we'll get to that. But yeah, that's kind of my experience collecting for the Super Nintendo. My Super Nintendo collection was pretty static, except for randos I picked up at half-price books for a long time.
I went into the Super Nintendo just so excited. When it first came out, I was 100% all about it. But you know, the games were expensive, so we couldn't get too many.
Right.
The first year, all I had was the Mario World that came with it and Chess Master.
Oh,
which I have since been told is one of the worst console chess games of all time, and one of the least enjoyed Super Nintendo games of all time. And I can understand that. I can understand that entirely. Mm-hmm. But no, we would eventually start getting some games as we started to find them used and from the local video store and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time that the console fell out of relevance as the PlayStation and Saturn were coming around, I had probably 10 to 15 games, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the prices dropping. So I started just grabbing up as many Super Nintendo games as I could in the late 90s, while their prices were still cheap. And the only ones that didn't drop in price were RPGs, which, if you've heard of me before, I am a fan of those.
I have heard this, yes.
So fortunately, I got a lot of those really early, like early to mid 90s. I got most of them between $20 and $40-ish, some of them a little less than that. When they were used. I can't justify the prices that they are now, no matter how much I enjoy the game.
Yeah, especially when, again, so many of them are available elsewhere.
And by the time that the 2000s came around, I kind of fell out of collecting Super NES stuff just because of how expensive it is.
Yeah.
So I just keep the games that I have.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am on it as well, just for pricing reasons.
Right.
But let's talk for people that do want to get into the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't get into the Super Nintendo in the past. Maybe you're into original hardware. Maybe you just want to know what games to play.
Yeah.
You have to start with a console. Thankfully, the console itself is affordable-ish. It's still less than $100 most of the time. You can
feels
get
like
it
so much for a Super Nintendo, though.
You can get it. I'm seeing them on like eBay, tested for around $80 to $90. Buy it now if you just want the system. May or may not come with cables. The Junior I'm seeing in the $100 to sub $100 range. There are a lot of people that are trying to sell them for over that, but you can get the system for less than $100.
And also, I'm just in a quick search, I'm seeing Super Famicoms that are complete with controllers and cables for about $50 to $60. Some of them up to 80 or 90. And keep in mind, if you're in North America, you can use a Super Famicom. It is 100% compatible with your television. It is going to work just fine, except for the games, which we'll get to.
Yeah. I would probably recommend a Japanese console, just as far as if you're looking for something affordable. But I don't know about. So I know in the North American Super Nintendo, it's region protection is basically two tabs that you can clip out of there with some little clippers or pliers or something.
Right.
You can also just get in there and wrench on them real hard and they'll bust off if you don't mind it looking ugly. And then you can play Super Famicom carts. Is it as easy to mod a Super Famicom to play American games?
Yes and no. So you don't have those tabs in there. So you don't have to worry about that. However, the shape of the cartridge slot is smaller on the Super Famicom than it is on the American Super NES.
Right.
So you have to carve out some of that slot to make extra room, which makes the system look ugly.
I would probably just pay the extra $30 if it was me.
Now, that said, you can also get any kind of spacer to put there that will just work. Things like Game Genies or Action Replays or whatever. If you get something that fits in there that will space it out, then you can just put a North American game in there and it will play. So there are options.
The Junior, for whatever reason, does seem to be more expensive than the traditional Super Nintendo.
That's weird.
It's it is weird, but maybe
there's
because it
some
was
reasoning for
later,
that.
maybe there was less of them. I don't know.
There is less of them. There's definitely less of them. Also, you can get better video out of a Super NES Junior than you can out of a standard Super NES if you mod it.
Yeah.
So let's
if
talk about hardware variants real quick, just to narrow all that down. So
yeah,
first of all, we're not experts on this. So if you really want the details,
I am.
Oh yeah, Justin is an expert. I am an amateur. But if you want the detailed information, Retro RGB has a whole write-up on all the consoles, really. But
Absolutely.
they do have a write-up.
And I do feel like in
the
the retro space, Retro RGB gets mentioned not a lot these days.
that's weird.
And they
should be.
They are still kind of the definitive place to go if you're looking to get into any kind of original hardware, retro gaming, upscaling video stuff, and they still update their stuff. So absolutely. Go. I just see them almost never mentioned in retro spaces lately.
That's unfortunate because they should be mentioned every single time.
Everyone recommends YouTube channels of people, and I'm like, no, just go to Retro RGB. Yeah. It's a written out guide,
right? So there's been several revisions. Everybody knows about the original and the smaller model, the Junior. But the original model had like 3 or 4 different variations, actual chipset differences.
Yeah,
in the original case, and they all have very minor changes as far as their video output and how the image looks and everything. However, every single original model supports RGB out natively. It supports S-Video out natively. The Super NES Junior only supports composite video out natively. You have to get it modded in order to support anything better than composite. But once it is modded, it gives you a better image picture than even a modified original model.
Yeah.
But you have to get that modded to get there. Also, the Junior is less likely to be discolored as far as the actual plastic goes, which is going to be an issue. If you're looking for original Super NES hardware, expect it to be brownish yellow.
Yeah.
It's how it's going to happen.
It's not even that it turns brownish yellow. It's that not the whole thing does. So it's this weird, gross looking thing.
Yeah.
I've seen
this multi-tone thing.
And for years, a lot of people would joke about smoking in the 90s. It's just the plastic. Now, granted, everyone smoked around them too, but it's mostly the plastic. And I will say for people that are like, hey, I'll just get an original model and I'll retro bright it. Retro brighting does make the plastic more brittle.
Yes.
So that is something to keep in mind. Now, I've never retro brighted because I just let my stuff be ugly.
I tried it.
Have you? Is it like, I mean, obviously you haven't busted your systems, but I was curious, like, how is it noticeably different, the actual plastic?
So I only did one run on it.
Okay.
I didn't do multiple treatments. And it didn't quite reach its original color, but it got a lot closer. But because there are those other components that didn't get discolored, it's still noticeable.
Yeah.
But it is definitely more brittle to the point to where several pieces that... Because I had gotten this Super Nintendo used from a friend of mine, and there were a couple of cracks in the front. And those places where the cracks got so brittle that it just started falling apart there. Like pieces of the plastic just fell off.
So it's not even... It is very noticeably more brittle.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you let it dry for a while and then reassemble it, as long as you're not like dropping anything on it, it's probably fine.
Right.
But it's not going to be as sturdy as the original plastic was.
Not something you want to hand to a kid to play Super Nintendo on.
Correct.
Because they'll probably smash it. It's tough. You're basically going to be looking at about $100 bill for the system between tax, shipping, everything else, possibly slightly more depending on how and where you buy it.
Right. And there's still plenty of flea markets and Goodwills and stuff where you could theoretically find it cheaper, but I would not wager money on that.
I would bet money on that not have. So the Super Nintendo is too iconic. Everybody knows. Cat's out of the bag. I don't think people... I mean, surely someone out there is getting that $5 flea market deal somewhere, but I think...
I don't know about $5, but I've seen plenty of people in recent years that are showing that they're getting it for $40, $50, $60. So it's plausible.
Which is more reasonable.
Yes.
As far as controllers, obviously in America we have the Superior controller, the purple buttons that are convex and concave.
I do
Alternating.
really like the convex concave part.
They're so nice.
Yeah.
But controllers from any Super Nintendo or Super Famicom will work. We also didn't mention, if you are shopping for between Japanese and American Super Famicom, Super Nintendos, be aware that the PAL territories Super Nintendo is more problematic.
Oh, is it?
Because you're going to be dealing with PAL frequencies. Like, are they?
Yeah. As far as region compatibility, yeah, the PAL games won't play on NTSC systems and vice versa. So,
Yeah.
And it's because of the different frequency that the games run at. And
so-
there are adapters and converters you can get around that, but they're not super cheap, and they're also not perfect. So,
Probably easier to stick with Japanese or North American variants.
assuming you're not in Europe already.
Right. If you're in Europe and you got the hardware for it, cool.
Right.
And if that's what's more affordable.
Yeah.
The controllers themselves work on any system.
Right.
And Super Nintendo controllers are pretty robust. I've seen very few of them break in my life.
I have seen several break in my life.
Have you?
Yeah, but this was back in the day. So this was when they were still a current console, and you would let any idiot do whatever they want with it. And they would throw
Right.
controllers across the room, or they would drop a table leg on it, or whatever ended up happening to it. Also, I saw plenty of them that had gotten chewed by dogs and stuff. So, and they're not impervious to damage, like, you know, the non-rubber parts of an Atari controller, but they are pretty sturdy, especially compared to modern controllers.
Yeah. And controllers themselves, price-wise, they're okay. There are a good amount of third-party controllers that you might be picking up. I don't know that there's any that I would personally recommend.
The only third-party one that I would give any kind of a recommendation for is ASCII's turbo controller. The ASCII
Yes. Is that the one that was kind of clear?
No. This is one that looks like a official OEM controller. It just happens to have turbo switches on it.
Okay. Yeah, that one I've seen around quite a bit. If you're after turbo, then certainly it's maybe the one to get. I didn't see much in the way of prices for original controllers.
So that also varies by region. The Japanese controllers tend to be a little bit cheaper, but you often have to pay for shipping from Japan.
Right.
And also, their cords are much shorter than the cords for North American or European controllers.
I never realized that.
I have.
Other stuff controller related that you might look at. You got your multi-taps. If you're wanting to do some Bomberman.
There was never a first-party multi-tap on the system. The closest to an official multi-tap is Hudson's multi-tap that came with Bomberman.
Now, was that the same as the Super multi-tap, or was
Yes,
that
that's the one that
that's
Hudson
the one, and that one's around like $50-$60.
Oh, holy shit! Really?
Yeah, it
my
is.
God. It used to be a $5 thing that people threw away.
No,
Holy fuck.
I see some around like the $35 range, but they range upward to $50-$60.
Now, if you're looking at first-party controllers, there's one warning I want to give people is that late in the console's life, after the junior model, the smaller Super NES came out, you started seeing reissued controllers. And I don't know if these were published by Nintendo themselves or if it was some third-party company trying to just pull the wool over or something. But so there's a few of them. There's the ones that look generally like a North American Super NES controller. The buttons are correct for a North American Super NES controller. But instead of it saying Super Nintendo at the top, it just has an engraved Nintendo logo, like embedded in the plastic. And it has a shorter cord like a Japanese controller.
Yeah.
So those are a little weird just because you don't have as much controller length, but there's also some that come in the exact same box, and you can tell it's the box that has Super Mario RPG style Mario and Yoshi on it. And the box looks legit, but when you open it up, the controller feels like shit. Like it feels like the worst third-party controller, but it has the Nintendo logo on it. It has the official buttons. it just feels like garbage. And that controller, instead of having the copyright or whatever text on the back embossed into the controller, it's a sticker. So if you see one of those that has the sticker on the back, don't fucking get that shit. It's a bad controller and you don't want it.
Other controllers, there's the Super Nintendo mouse, stays pretty affordable. It's around like 15, 20 bucks. Mine just literally stopped working on me finally, eventually. Yep, just quit. Hyperkin, I think, makes a replacement mouse that is a laser, and I think theirs is like $20.
Yep.
There is the Super Scope.
Yep.
Which I never bothered with it because there's just not enough support on the Super Nintendo and the Super Scope.
We had a Super Scope. It's a weird device, and it has a lot of different pieces, and they're easy to lose. So if you are looking for a Super Scope, do some research first. Find out what all pieces it includes. Make sure you have the rubber for the scope itself. Because, man, all that stuff is easy to lose, and you don't want to fuck with that.
Yeah. Let's talk video cables. If you all of the Super Nintendo support composite, as far as I know, every version they ever made supports composite.
Yes.
There are a lot of RF adapters. Shouldn't use them. You should probably go composite because it's
also the Junior doesn't support RF. You have to use an adapter for it.
Oh, really? Well, good.
Yeah.
You shouldn't use RF. You should use composite. There are a lot of S-video cables floating around out there that will work on the original model Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
And you can get them very cheap. I'm talking like $5 cheap. Here's the thing about S-video cables is that they are not all created equal.
It's fair.
And the bad ones will give you a very bad image. So seek out reputable S-video cables if that's the route you're going to go. I've been through a few different brands, and the brand I have now, I don't even remember what it was because I bought 2 or 3 firing through all the cheap ones, and I finally found one that works okay. But just be careful. Go see what the current recommendation is because the manufacturers change pretty frequently. I know that it's also weird because like companies like Hyperkin, they'll put out some video cables for some systems that are really good. And then like their S-video cables for Super Nintendo suck. And you don't want them.
Also, Nintendo made an official S-video cable. It's branded for the N64 or the GameCube, but it does work on the Super NES. So
yeah, because it's all the same
for a while.
Plug.
Yeah, exactly.
HD Retrovision does make a set of SNES component cables. They make very high quality stuff.
Yep.
I don't know if there's a RAD 2X that fits the Super Nintendo and N64 and all that, but you might look into that. It could be an option. I've always felt that the Super Nintendo, really anything 16-bit and before, looks fine on composite.
Yeah.
I've gone back and forth since getting S-video cables for my Super Nintendo, and I don't know, maybe I just still have a bad cable, but I don't notice a huge difference between S-video and composite a lot of the time.
Now that I have my Super NES Junior RGB modded, I can definitely tell.
Yeah, well, that you would definitely notice.
That's pretty dang good.
Let's talk hardware mods then.
Yeah.
What are we looking at price-wise? If you want to get a Junior, so a Junior is about $100. Let's say you want to RGB mod it.
Yeah, let me actually double check exactly what I paid for that
because I would be very curious to see how much you actually. Because you did multiple things. You also added a power light, didn't you?
Yes, he did add a power light. It looks like grand total plus shipping and the power light and everything was $90. So that's not too bad.
System and mod, you're looking at about $200 to get RGB out. If you want to pick up a flash cart, those are reasonable on the Super Nintendo at around $100.
Yeah.
For something like an EverDrive. So you're looking at $300. You can get the original hardware, RGB modded for whatever you're displaying it on, with virtually every game, most games anyway, playing on it with an EverDrive.
Yeah.
Which is not, for me, I feel like we've come to the $300 price point several times in these one-on-one episodes, and I feel like $300 is kind of a sweet spot for me.
Yeah.
Like $300 to have original hardware working with virtually all of the library available in good video resolution. I think that's a decent deal for a system if you're after original hardware.
Looks like his price has gone up because of the price of the hardware. So it looks like it's about $130 now for the model.
Okay. So we're looking at $330, maybe $350, which gets a little outside of the sweet spot that I was just going on and on and on about. There are some games that you're going to have trouble with on things like EverDrives because there are a lot of weird chips in Super Nintendo games.
Yes. The EverDrive on the Super NES is not the preferred flash cart for the Super NES, whereas the EverDrive is usually the premier flash cart for most systems.
Yeah.
For Super NES fans, it is generally not recommended just because of how many games don't work on it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the big games that won't work on the EverDrive, you got Mario RPG, Star Fox, Kirby Superstar, Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, Mega Man X2 and 3, Street Fighter Alpha 2, and Star Ocean are completely non-playable.
So if you go for the FX Pack Pro, which was previously the SD2 SNES, which is that's the preferred one now, right?
And it's compatible with basically everything. There's like 6 or 7 games that don't work on it, and they're mostly Japanese exclusive shogi games.
The issue is it's $250.
Correct. It is exorbitantly priced.
So if we're looking at $250 for the FX Pack Pro, the system itself is $100. The mod is $130.
Now that's if you need the mod, because if you can
true, if you're just going composite,
yeah, then
you can just pick up a system. You'd be about $350,
right?
Which is
still pretty steep.
It's getting up there.
Yeah,
it is getting up there.
The FX Pack Pro can play Satellaview games,
which is cool. And the chances of you actually getting Satellaview stuff working otherwise it's
nil. It's impossible.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So that's a cool perk, but I don't know. I mean, Satellaview stuff is an interesting footnote for me. I don't know if there's much there that I really want to sit down and play, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So
there's some neat stuff on there, but
there's
I don't
some
know
neat
if it's
stuff.
Nothing I would have bought.
Yeah. Let's talk emulation before we talk software, because I feel like this is already where we're drifting with these price points. We're at $300. We're well over $300 for just kind of a base original hardware setup.
If you're getting a flash card anyway.
If you're getting flash card.
Yeah.
If you're getting original cartridges, then God help you.
We'll get to that.
The Super Nintendo is very well emulated. It's been supported on every virtual console. It's on the Nintendo Switch Online.
Yep.
There was the Super Nintendo Classic Edition. That's running, I think last I checked, around $100.
It was going more than that last I looked, but it's been a while.
Oh no! I swear I saw it cheaper.
Maybe it's gotten cheaper again.
Like, I like the Mini a lot. I think the Mini, like I've said a million times, is a good middle ground if you're like, hey, I just want to have that kind of console-esque experience and have a thing hooked up to my TV, but I don't want to, go broke or take out a second mortgage. Then I think it's still a good option. There are some other devices. There's the Hyperkin Superboy, which I don't even know if they make that anymore. Last I checked, it was like, I think around $100, like $85, $90. There's the Retrobit Super Trio that used to be floating around.
There's several Retrobit and Hyperkin systems.
Yeah, as far as I know, most of their multi-systems do indeed do that.
The Retro Duo still plays it.
Yep.
Which you can still find those for fairly cheap. Of course, the analog Super NT plays them, but that's discontinued at this point.
Yeah. As far as the Mini, if you can get it, I think for a reasonable price, which is like $100 or less, as soon as you hit over $100 for a mini console,
it's hard to justify.
It's hard to justify when there are Raspberry Pis coming back in stock.
Exactly.
Granted, that requires...
Even if there's not Raspberry Pis coming back in stock, there's so many little tiny, emulation handhelds or whatever that are in that price range.
Yeah.
That
handle Super Nintendo fine.
Exactly.
Yeah. My Miu Mini does it just fine. I know like all of the Anbernic devices handle Super Nintendo fine. Every now and then, some of them these days still have issues with like Super FX stuff.
Right.
But most of the decent ones are going to handle Super Nintendo just fine. Yeah. And really, if you're wanting that on a CRT experience, I know I've recommended it a million times, but for the Super Nintendo especially, a hacked Wii is still a great choice.
Oh, yeah.
You'll get clean 240p over component from a hacked Wii.
Yeah.
And hacked Wiis are still relative. I mean, you can still get a Wii for, what were they last time we checked? Like 60, $70?
In that range, yeah.
Which is high for a Wii, but man,
Yeah.
you can do a lot. If you really are like, I want this hooked up to putting out 240p to a CRT or whatever, it's still a really, really great option.
And the classic controller for the Wii feels pretty good for Super NES gameplay.
Yeah.
And you can also get an off-brand Super NES classic controller
Yeah.
to plug into a Wiimote and play with.
Or you can pick up RAFnet still sells adapters for the if you want to have a regular Super Nintendo controller and just adapt it to a Wii Classic controller.
Absolutely.
As far as emulators, you've got ZSNES, which is a little older. You still
Antiquated now.
see it sometimes. SNES 9X is kind of the big, broadly compatible, mostly accurate one that you're going to see running on things.
Yep.
BSNES and Hygen are the accurate ones, but they don't run on as much stuff and they require a lot more hardware.
Yeah.
And all of these cores are available in RetroArch. Honestly, RetroArch default cores for Super Nintendo are pretty good.
Yeah, they're just
98% of the time.
99% of the time.
You're not going to notice any issues. But let's talk software.
Okay.
Let's talk to the people that are saying, but Justin and Saturn, I want to buy my $100 Super Nintendo, and I still want to buy cartridges for it. Well, first of all, man, good luck.
It's, there are games that you can get for reasonable price.
This is true. Let's talk in the under $10 category. And I'm kind of surprised at some of these.
Yeah.
Because Buster Bust Loose is a really fun game.
It is.
SimCity for under $10. Are you kidding me?
It was right at $10. It was like $9.98 was the price that I saw it at the other day when I was looking at all this.
Yeah. That's an awesome price.
That's an incredible game. What's weird is they had a separate listing for the Player's Choice re-release of it, and that one was like $13. I was like, why?
Yeah.
Why? One, why are these separate listings? And two, why is that one more? I don't get it. Anyway,
if you're a sports fan, there's tons of games under $5.
Oh, yeah,
if you like old 16-bit sports games. One that was real cheap, Super Caesar's Palace. I'm not going to pretend like I haven't spent a couple nights on Caesar's Palace. Vegas Stakes is another one.
Right.
Populous is $6.
Yeah, but
I know it's not an awesome version of Populous.
A couple games that I put on here that are under $10. D-Force, which is like a pretty B- shmup, but sometimes you want to play a B- shmup.
Yeah, I'm seeing it at $6.99.
Yeah. RPM Racing, which was a Blizzard released isometric racing game on the Super NES, which is pretty fun.
Yeah.
Super Putty is a port of an Amiga platformer, which is really weird, but it's, entertaining.
Yeah.
And then Super Star Wars is one that people like for some reason, presumably because they hate themselves.
I don't love that game.
Also, Bubsy is under $10.
Oh, let's just memes aside. The first Bubsy is an okay platformer.
It's a mean platformer.
It's fine.
It's cruel.
Except you can pick up the legendary Shaq Fu for less than $10
for some reason.
Just throwing that one out there.
But if you bump up your price range to 25 and under, you get a bunch of really solid games.
Yeah, even not even much higher than that. Like the Samurai Showdown has a really good Super Nintendo port. It's $15.
Yep.
Final Fight is $15.
Yeah.
Fatal Fury is $15. Super Godzilla is $15. It's not awesome, but it's there. Tetris Attack is $15.50.
Yes.
And Tetris Attack is fucking awesome. Darius
one of the
Twin.
best games on the system.
Darius Twin is like $17-$18.
Yeah, Lemmings is pretty cheap. Star Fox is pretty cheap. PTO is one that I never got into, but I know people enjoy it.
Yeah.
Top Gear, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, Mickey's Magical Quest, which is an excellent platformer. The first two Donkey Kong countries are both under 25. Mario World is under 25.
Your Street Fighters, your Mortal Kombats. I didn't look up Killer Instinct. I'm curious.
It's under 25 as well.
I think it is.
I have that on my list.
Yeah. Okay.
Ys 3 is under 25. That Tetris and Dr. Mario 2-pack is under 25.
Yep.
Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Super Adventure Island. There's Gradius 3, F-Zero. There's a bunch of, you can get Mario Paint and a mouse for under 25. So there's a lot of good games. In
You
that
got
range.
Bust a Move. You've got Donkey Kong
Yep.
Country. There's
Did I say Star Fox already? I don't remember.
I don't
Earth
know.
Defense Force. That's another one that I enjoy. That's another solid B- shmup.
That one is. That's a fun game.
Yeah.
If you didn't say it, Super Mario All Stars, although I'm sure you did, was on my
Probably
list.
forgot to say it, but I did have it listed.
Also, Alien 3 is right at $25. That's a pretty fun Super Nintendo game. If you
That
know,
is
if you
a
like
game.
licensed, it's I like that game. I think it's a good game, Saturn. I enjoy it.
And then if you're willing to go over 25, there's still plenty of good games that are under 50. Even some of the really big games are between 25 and 50, like Mega Man X and Link to the Past, the Bombermans, the Actraisers.
Yeah,
Lost
Super
Vikings.
Bomberman's $40. You've got Secret of Evermore is $36.
Yeah, Secret of Mana is also under 50. So is Final Fantasy IV.
Super Double Dragon, Return of Double Dragon. Cybernator is a game. Cybernator has gone up. I got it for like $2. It's $35.
Hearing Super Bomberman for $40 is painful to me because that used to be like a bargain bin $5 game for years.
Lost Vikings is $35,
Yes.
although you'd probably just play it on something more modern because they've got the Blizzard collection these days.
Right. Which also has RPM racing now.
Mr. Do is just squeezes in under $50.
That's insane because I love Mr. Do, but that is a arcade game from 1982.
If you're willing to get right on that $50 line, you can get like Super Turrican, Blackthorn is there.
Yep.
Biometal is just a little bit over. Kirby Superstar is just a little bit over. Street Fighter Alpha 2 is like $55-$60. But
It's an impressive cart, but play it somewhere else.
yeah, Final Fantasy 3 I feel is the one we have to talk about. It's about $60 and up.
And it's
Depending.
never dropped in price. It's been at 60 or higher since 95-ish.
And Lufia is above that. Lufia and the Fortress of Doom is 62, although I believe the American Super Nintendo version is the one you don't want to play, right? Is that, am
That's
I remembering
Lufia
that?
2 is the one that you would rather
okay.
play the European print if you
Yes.
can. But Lufia 1 did not come out in Europe.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. If you want to get into the stupid prices, like Chrono Trigger's $200.
Why?
It just is. Dracula X is over 300. Earthbound is over 300. Harvest Moon is over 300.
Earthbound is a lot over 300.
So, but that said, you can get a lot of game in the $50 and under category. And I think in the 25 and under, and really the 15 and under category, you can get a lot of game. But here's the thing. If you are here for the JRPGs, you're going to have a bad time.
Now, there are some that you can get at a reasonable price. Stuff like
Tecmo's Secret of the Stars.
You don't want that one, though. Breath of Fire is under $50. Final Fantasy IV is under $50. Secret of Mana is under $50. Illusion of Gaia is under $50. There's games you can get if you're trying to keep under that price range.
Yeah.
I didn't check the price of an Indo. That's
I didn't look at that one.
Cheapy RPG. I can't imagine that's worth anything.
Yeah. So if you're going to be selective, like
$28 for an Indo. So there's RPGs you can get
in the 25 and under category. You've got a good mixture. There's some shmups. You got your Marios. You've got a ton of fighting games. There's a couple of RPG experiences. And maybe you splurge and go crazy for one of the $50 and over RPGs. And I think you could put together a reasonable library of a few games for under $300, including the system.
Yeah.
I really do. That said, I don't know.
It's so easy to emulate it.
The Super Nintendo emulates so well.
Yeah.
It's so nice. So many of these games have been collected elsewhere. Your Final Fantasies, your Chrono Triggers, even your Breath of Fires. I know that they're still affordable. Your Street Fighters, your Mortal Kombats, like these exist in so many other places that it's tough.
Yeah.
It's
There
tough.
are some
to still
exclusive
recommend it.
games,
Mm-hmm.
like Secret of Evermore.
Yes.
You can't play that anywhere else
No.
except for an emulator.
You'd be emulating. Yeah. So if you
Whether or not you want
Secret
to
of
play
Evermore,
Secret of
then
Evermore.
there you go. So I don't know. I think it's a good mix. I think there's still some good stuff here. I think if I had $300 in my pocket, I would probably pick up one high-end game, a Final Fantasy 3, a Super Bomberman 2 or whatever, and then pick up 2 or 3 $15 to $25 games, and then however many I have left for $10 category.
Right.
And I think that would be a decent library, and I think that you could have a really good time with this system. I think, honestly, you could spend $150, get a Super Nintendo, and get Super Mario All-Stars and World.
Yeah.
And then maybe if you're really frugal, squeeze in Mario Paint.
Or SimCity.
Or SimCity, and that's enough for me.
Yeah,
honestly,
that's a good set. That's going to keep you occupied for a while.
But again, if you're hardcore going into this with that retroactive mindset of like the Super Nintendo is the JRPG system, and I want to play all the JRPGs, you're going to break the bank fast.
Yeah, and the thing is, I played a ton of JRPGs on the Super NES, but I also played a ton of everything else on the Super NES, and there's a lot of great not JRPG games that you can still play on there.
Yeah.
And a lot of them don't get as much attention as they probably should over the years. Like we mentioned Buster Bust Loose earlier. That was a hell of a fun game.
It was a really good game.
And it's dirt cheap. And it's not like it's ever going to get re-released because Konami is not going to pay for that license again.
And there's some weirder stuff, like there's a really good Power Rangers brawler on Super Nintendo that's still cheap. MechWarrior 3050 is like $15. I played that the other day, and it was fun. Like, it's not the most in-depth game. There are several Double Dragon games on there that are relatively affordable.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're an original hardware diehard, I know that everyone wants to laugh and point at the Earthbounds and the Chrono Triggers and stuff like that, and be like, oh my god, how can anyone afford this hobby? And if you are a completionist, then no, you can't afford this hobby. Of course you fucking can't. But if you just want to have a decent library of 10 really good Super Nintendo games, I think you can still do it with the hardware for under that $300 price point.
And if you don't care about piracy, because, it's not like anybody's making money off of these games anymore, aside from the prior owners, there's 1,000 Etsy shops that are going to sell you repros of any one of those games.
Oh, yeah.
So then you don't have to spend so much.
Yeah. All that said, one, don't buy Ninja Gaiden Trilogy. It's $185, and it's shitty versions of the game.
Right.
Two, emulate. Please emulate.
Yeah,
just emulate it.
Emulate it.
It's
There's
great.
So many good games, and then you don't have to pay for them.
If you've got a decent x86 PC, you can run Hygen or BSNES and run it cycle accurate, and it's great. If
you've never played Super NES and you have a Switch, just try Nintendo Switch Online for a month.
Give it a shot.
There's a bunch of good games on there.
I still see a lot of people in the retro gaming space talking about things like, well, controller lag and this, and how can you play on anything except a CRT? And it's been all these years, and I still see people saying it. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of these people probably tried emulation back in 2015, and we're like, or earlier, and we're like, oh, yeah, it's definitely not as good as original stuff on a CRT. And then they have been singing that gospel all these years. Let me tell you, if you're on a decent computer monitor with a wired controller and using RetroArch's run ahead feature, unless you're a speedrunner, I dare you to notice the lag. I dare you. Really, honestly. If you have a nice monitor, you're plugged in via USB, and you're using run ahead,
Honestly,
I don't know how people notice that.
Most of the time I struggle to notice it anyway. Me
too.
I've been playing between original hardware and emulators back and forth for well over 25 years now. And I very, very rarely have any kind of issue with lag. So I am clearly not that affected by it.
Yeah.
But it's got to be good enough for a lot of especially the JRPGs.
Oh, for sure.
You're not going to notice
which are the ones you need to be emulating anyway. They're expensive.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think the Super Nintendo is still a good system to collect for whenever you kind of cut out some of these more ridiculous prices. There's still a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah.
To love here. that is not well over $100. If you have to have Chrono Trigger and Earthbound and Mario RPG, then yeah, don't. You're gonna spend $500 fucking dollars, probably more. But if you're okay playing, Secret of Evermore and Mario All Stars, and we didn't even mention Mario Kart. It's like $30, which feels insanely high for Mario Kart, but it's affordable. Also, Mega Man X, the best game on the whole system, is still floating around $30.
Yep.
Just
don't look at the prices for 2 and 3.
Yeah, don't look at those. Also, they're not nearly as good as the first game, so just pretend they don't exist.
Right.
ActRaiser is, I think, $35.
Yep.
Then I think it's still there. You can still have these experiences for decent prices while they last. But all of that said, emulation for the Super Nintendo is extremely mature.
Exactly.
It is extremely compatible. And if you're willing to go through the extra hoops, it is extremely accurate.
Yeah, BSNES is ludicrously accurate.
Yeah. So if that's you and you're like, no, it has to be as accurate as possible, get you a USB controller, buy a good computer monitor. You should have one anyway because good computer monitors are nice to have. And then load up BSNES and you're there, I promise. If you need scan lines, then delve into shaders because I promise they'll get you there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the Super Nintendo, Saturn.
That's all of the Super Nintendo.
That's the whole thing. And if you want to hear more about the Super Nintendo, let me tell you, well, we have Patreon, where we have lots more Super Nintendo related content that you can go listen to.
And also, we have a Discord where we will talk about Super Nintendo all day. You just have to ask us.
If you just show up and you're like, hey, I want off-the-cuff Super Nintendo riffing, what do you think about Mohawk and headphone jack at $32.99 or ASP Airstrike Patrol? Then I'll fucking tell you.
You just have to show up
and ask.
And we will tell you our opinion on Urban Strike. You just have to come ask us.
We do want to thank the following patrons for their kind donations, starting with Evelyn Belchev,
Jason Frudnick and his Frog Fred,
Logan Sharp,
Mark Bowler,
Mark Meredith,
Matthew Davis,
Sad Billy Mitchell Noises,
Nick Brown,
Novocaine FS,
and Poncho Man Randy Savage.
Are all the legal names of the people we want to thank. Their kind donations to our Patreon. Definitely, and we want to thank you for rating and reviewing us. Please, oh my God. Please rate and review us. Please. Maybe just do one or the other. You don't got to do both. Well, I mean, if you review, you got to leave a rating, but you can just do a rating. You just be like 5 stars. Or you know what? I'll take 4 stars. I'll be honest with you. We're in dire straits here. I'll take 3 stars. I'm going to put it out there.
Just rate it 5 stars with only the text farts.
Please just say farts and give us 5 stars, and then say downloads and give us 5 stars. That's what we need in our lives. Anyway, thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.